Tell us a little bit about what you saw and being able to relay that message to Cora when you watched Kimbrel pitch and kind of help out so he wasn't tipping his pitches.
So tipping pitches, we hear about it all the time.
People at home understand what tipping pitches is all about.
It's amazing.
And that's remarkable.
Alex, how was your week? I know you were doing some traveling last week. I heard that you went on vacation with a man by the name of Robert Herjavec? How was your vacation with him and his family?
I don't even know who this man is, so I don't even get the bit.
God damn it. You're ruining my jokes, bro.
I'm sorry.
You're ruining my jokes. That's the guy who was on the plane that everyone thought Ohtani was on.
The Shark Tank guy.
The Shark Tank
That's
guy.
right.
You didn't even bother learning his name.
He's the one Shark Tank guy who I'm just like, you're just a kind of flimsy piece of paper they stick at the end of the chairs.
He founded BRAC Systems, a Canadian integrator of internet security software, and sold it to AT&T Canada in 2000 for only $30 million. And then he founded another company and sold it for $200 million. You just gotta keep founding companies, you know.
You really do. I mean, volume shooters.
One of them is bound to break through.
Exactly.
Like, it just so happened that Zuckerberg, Facebook was the first one, but if that didn't work,
he had other ideas in the hopper.
Irons in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So how was your trip? That bit was ruined. It's all over. We have a long pod in front of us.
It was great. Okay. My passport's expired. That was really awkward when I got to the customs control.
And they detained you. Your passport, how is everything in your life expired? Answer that question for me.
Mostly just because that's a really good question. Actually, if we're being honest, if I reflect on it for more than 2 seconds, mostly because I kick the can down the road to my future self, but that future self often does not appreciate that very much, and I think maybe even spitefully refuses to engage with whatever task has been kicked down to me. So it's a continual game of me like spiting myself, and being like, well, I'm not going to do this to prove a point to Alex 6 months ago, that he's got to get his shit together.
How's that working?
It's not working great. I still don't have a passport.
You need one though, right? You're doing some international travel next year.
Some might say.
I'm just at the MLB London game with myself in a cardboard cutout of you. All right, we have a lot to talk about. We have a wonderful episode coming up with Jake Mintz and Jordan Shusterman of Céspedes Family Barbecue, in which the four of us just tossed out a ton of topics, and we debated whether those things were overrated or underrated or properly rated.
Mm-hmm.
And it went in wild and wonderful places. And I mean, anytime we have Jake and Jordan on, it just turns into a lot of digressions and fun and hilarious bits. So I'm excited for everybody to hear that. But we have some business to attend to first, and that is talking about Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. Two players who are on the move this week, just kind of remarkably, all in the span of the time period since we recorded last. We're going to do all of that. But before we do, I am Bobby Wagner.
I'm Alex Baisley.
And you are listening to Tipping Pitches. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money all in one place for free, Alex. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and I got to know how it works.
I'd be happy to tell you, Bobby. Spotify for Podcasters is really easy. It lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone.
From where?
Right from your phone or computer.
No way.
So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today.
Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. That is very important. People are listening to podcasts everywhere these days, I hear.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify for those who like being in front of a camera. You can even kickstart conversations with your fans, as listeners of this show well know, with Q&As and polls.
With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways. Differentiated revenue streams, very important. We know all about that, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it is totally free with no catch.
Spotify for Podcasters has made it really easy for us to distribute our podcast, monitor analytics, and engage with our fan base all in one space. So if you're interested, download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Alex.
Bobby.
$700 million. Hang on, wait, I forgot to thank the patrons. The patrons are really who's going to get us to $700 million. So I got to thank them first. Thank you to Ben and Kyle. And to anyone who's edited their pledge, to join the top tier to get access to the bonus feed. Thank you to all you people. It doesn't really collate you guys at the top of the list the way that it does with new people, but I want to just give a blanket thank you to anybody who has upgraded their pledge to be either in the $7 tier or the $12 tier. We thank you very much. That's patreon.com/tippingpitches. We don't have time to do the whole spiel on this episode. We got a lot of business to attend to. Dude.
700 million.
Underpaid? Underrated?
Yes to both of these. I know you already did that bit on Twitter, but here's
You're
the thing about
back on Twitter, bro. You're so
I
back.
am so
you are
back.
so
Yep.
back.
Mm-hmm.
Elon got your ass.
He really did. Yeah. I was like, Elon might be turning this place around. I actually like the blue check bots in my mentions. Here's the thing about trying to put a dollar amount
50
on
times a day we get tagged. 50 times a day we get tagged by bots. 50 times a day.
Of course, $700 million is a fuck ton of money. And of course, it is drastically underselling his abilities still, somehow.
The thing that's remarkable for me about the number, and then we can talk about him landing on the Dodgers, and of course, we can talk about just the week that was in ridiculousness. But the thing that's remarkable about the number to me is that no one even came close to sniffing, suggesting that high of a number. Nobody was even like, it's going to be over 600 million. I mean, there were people who were like, it should be, or it could be, but there was no one who was going out on a limb and being like, this is how much he's going to get, or this is the ballpark that I'm hearing. And that's probably a testament to how under wraps these negotiations were, or how under wraps Ohtani's camp is in general. But most people were like, I don't know, 550 million. If we look at what Mike Trout got, 465 over 12 years, maybe just add 100 million on that, whatever. And dudes were just guessing, basically, because the number blew that out of the water. And of course, there's some discussion about a lot of that money being deferred and that changing the average annual value, which changes the calculus, both for Ohtani's camp, but also for the Dodgers giving this type of contract. But aside from that, if we just look at how much money he got from the Dodgers, it's way more than anyone thought, which I guess is a good thing, right?
I liked John Heyman tweeted out word from supposedly one of Ohtani's other suitors, who said, quote, "We certainly were not at 699 million," which is kind of a bar. Because when you're the Dodgers, you can do that. You can just say, we'll go a couple standard deviations above what everyone else is offering.
Well, especially when you're the Dodgers and you've been clearing the decks for 3 years to do this exact thing.
Exactly. You kind of have to do that.
This is the project, this is what it was. This is what it was for.
Yeah.
I read an article on The Athletic, just to make this about the Mets for a couple seconds, in which Steve Cohen had a quote saying the agent never made contact, which I thought was pretty telling, that he had no interest in playing for the Mets. And he didn't even have enough synthetic interest to use the Mets to drive up the price. He didn't feel like he even needed to do that. So it was never going to happen, but more money for Yamamoto.
That's right.
Let's get 350.
Back up the dump truck.
Don't care. Not my money. Give it all to Yamamoto. Don't care. Cannot have him anywhere else. Certainly can't have him on the Yankees. Back to Ohtani. Just one of the dumber weeks in baseball history. Actually, really just one of the dumber single days. It was really only a day, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
This is where the speculation started, where John Morosi reported that he was hearing that Ohtani's decision was most likely to come today. And this was Thursday.
Yeah, well, before that even, let's back up a little, because there's the important context of there was word coming out of Ohtani's camp that he was going to potentially ding teams if they were leaking details about the contract, right? And there's already all this speculation about they don't want to reveal the dog's name because it might have something to do with the resulting team. And so that, coupled with the fact that nothing has happened at the winter meetings as a result of basically everyone waiting for this shoe to drop, right? So you've got all these factors of like non-news coming together, setting the stage for what would ultimately be one of the dumber days on baseball Twitter.
One thing you left
but
out,
dumber days. Yes.
That's my favorite small detail in this whole story, especially now that he signed with the Dodgers, was Dave Roberts not knowing that and coming out and telling reporters directly that they met with Ohtani at Dodger Stadium for 3 hours.
Okay, here's
Lord,
the thing.
What a king. He's like, that's such a Sigma move. He's like, fuck your little needs. I don't even know about them. That's how important I am. I'm the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Who? Ohtani who?
Yeah. Here's the thing, is like there were a lot of people who were really like upset by that. They were like, why would Ohtani, is he that dumb that he's going to pick a team based on, what they're saying to the media? And the answer is no, he's not. I mean, like, obviously that is obvious now in hindsight, but that was never true. Like, what a great way to make sure your shit doesn't leak.
It worked.
It worked, right? And it sent
worked.
everyone into a frenzy. But I don't know. I respect the fuck out of Dave Roberts for that. And for Friedman coming out afterwards and being like, whoa, he said what? I can't comment on that.
I don't know if this is real, but I saw someone tweeting that apparently it seemed like Roberts received a text message after saying these things that elucidated that he should not be sharing this information, and then he stopped talking about it. Which, if that is true, I'm just gonna not even look into that whether or not that's true, because I want it to be true so bad. That's so funny. Dave Roberts, he's still cooking. That takes us to Thursday. Thank you for providing that context, where Morosi shares that he believes that Ohtani will be making a decision on this day. At which point, kind of like the best and worst parts of the internet coalesce in a weird Venn diagram that lasted for 16 hours. Because flight tracking has become a thing in sports free agency. It's a very popular thing to happen on NBA Twitter, because that league is driven by transactions. It's become a popular thing among Swifties that they're tracking her private jet and where it's going and what that means for her and her relationships and her business deals and all these sorts of things. And there was a flight going from Orange County to Toronto, a kind of a weird flight path. A lot of wealthy people don't fly out of Orange County's airport. A lot of them would fly out of like smaller LA airports. And so that led an enterprising Twitter user to deduce that this could be Ohtani's plane. And then people took that and ran with it. And there were hockey players tweeting vague congratulations at the Blue Jays. There was rumors about that Yusei Kikuchi had rented out an entire sushi restaurant for 50 plus people in Toronto. This just sounds so ridiculous saying in hindsight.
But like the Swiftification of this whole thing,
yes.
Like there were people who were like, look, there was a lot of hand wringing over the fact that this is bad for the game, that the media can't report on this. This holding up the winter meetings.
Interested in talking about. Yes.
Right, I know. Yeah. And there were very prominent members of the baseball media who were making the case that this is bad for the sport. It's bad for fans who want to know what's going on. It's potentially bad for teams who are trying to negotiate in good faith. And most importantly here, it is bad for the media members who need to report on something, right? Let us not forget the Ken Rosenthal's of the world. And I just got to say, looking back, like it was a stupid argument in the moment, but I don't know how you can now look back on the last week and think that it was not wildly entertaining. Dumb, over the top, like not worth any of our times, but wildly I was reading Reddit threads. It was like, oh, the Mariners offered him 1 year, $65 million to do this or whatever, or let's break down, let's read the tea leaves into what his dog's name could be. And I was in on it. I was like, let's fucking go. Let's do this.
I would like to shrink the aperture even more on the media conversation and how it was bad for the media, because yes, there was a whole like, oh, the winter meetings are boring because Ohtani's not signing and he should have signed so that more things could have happened at the winter meetings, which was like bad faith, but in like a haughty, myopic way that the media I've come to expect from the media. The way that the media responded like Thursday evening after it became clear that he wasn't actually on a plane going to Toronto and he wasn't most likely going to sign there on Thursday night, even though it was still a potential thing. And there was a couple reports that he had already agreed to a contract with the Blue Jays, which turned out to be wrong, obviously, now that it's been confirmed via Ohtani's Instagram, which is one of the underratedly funny parts about all of this too, which is that he broke his own news on Instagram. On Thursday night, the way that the media was like, this is a dark day for baseball media. This was an embarrassment to be a part of. We as journalists, capital J journalists, need to do better, capital B better. We need to be seekers of truth and we need to be more careful with what we share and circulate. And this is a dark mark on our game and our off season. And I'm embarrassed to be on twitter.com today. Like, that is truly, earnestly, some of the dumbest shit I've ever read. The idea that like society is worse off because there were 100,000 tweets about jokes about Ohtani going on a plane to Toronto is absurd. Frankly, absurd. Borderline offensive in a world that actually has bad shit going on.
Yeah.
To suggest that this is any kind of serious problem is ridiculous. And there were serious people doing that. Serious people whose work otherwise I support and like. We're like, this is bad for our game. Capital O, our capital G game.
Yeah.
Like, please, for the love of God. I know that being a baseball reporter, it's mandatory that you pretend like baseball is the center of the universe, but it's really not. It's really not. No one's going to die because Ohtani signed with the Dodgers. No one's going to die.
My theory about all of this is that Ohtani's camp was orchestrating all of this. Like, I have to believe they were leaking to Morosi, that they were setting up sock puppet accounts to tweet out flight paths, which I just also want to say is fucking brilliant. Like, I think that in the spirit of this podcast, the resulting, the episode that will come, I think Ohtani's prowess as a mover of markets is underrated.
I agree.
Not that was up for debate necessarily, but like the idea that all of this was just kind of happening feels a little too good to be true. Like, in the best way possible. I admire him and his agents for doing all of this. And again, I think it was far more entertaining than learning on like the third day of the winter meetings that like getting a report from Rosenthal that said Dodgers and Ohtani are making progress and waiting on a physical. And then us just
so
moving
right.
on.
You're so right.
Like, this is a once in a lifetime free agency bonanza anyway. Like, why not make it weird as fuck?
Yeah. Why not? The Correa saga was objectively more like drawn out and hard to follow than this. There was really only like two competing theories going on for the Ohtani thing. One, that he was flying to Toronto to close the deal and that he was on this specific plane that was being tracked by 4,500 people in real time on the flight tracker website. And that he was going to go have sushi celebrating with Yusei Kikuchi afterwards. That was all one thing. And the other competing theory was shared by Bob Nightingale, who will come
That's
up
right.
on the Patreon version of our conversation with Jake and Jordan. Was shared by Bob Nightingale, which is that he was not on a plane to Toronto. Capital not on a plane to Toronto. He was at his home in Southern California. And that turned out to be right. Another Bob masterclass.
God, what Bob. A fucking legend, man.
Go off, Nightingale. And then it was all resolved the next day the next afternoon when Ohtani just posted on Instagram that he was going with the Dodgers, apologized for all of the back and forth, apologized as if any of it was really his fault. So funny.
Yeah.
And with Correa and like even with Judge, when Heyman got it wrong, Arson Judge, there was almost more confusion when that stuff happened because Correa had a deal with the Giants. Then he had a deal with the Mets. And then neither of those deals stood up. And then he went back to the Twins. Like that is harder to follow because it was like confirmed by the big reporters at first. This would have been like if Rosenthal tweeted, he is on that plane, he is signing with the Blue Jays.
Right.
Then I could have seen a world in which it would have been like journalists would have some serious reservations about how we are all rushing to try to be first and we're getting it legitimately wrong to the point where people believe it. But I'm not sure that the conspiratorializing over him going to the Blue Jays was ever to the point where like people felt hoodwinked that he didn't sign with the Blue Jays. Like we had circumstantial at best evidence, bro.
Right.
So that would not even hold up in a fucking movie, let alone an actual court.
I love that he broke his own news. I will say, of course, Passan was the one who broke it to me because he's on that shit and I have the notifications on, right? And so he broke the news of the Instagram story or the Instagram post. But it's so legendary. Just tweet out a photo of the logo, like a mid-res photo at best.
I know. Not even like a photo of Dodger Stadium or like
right,
the field.
Exactly. Or like
just
him in like mocked up in a uniform or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, he just said this is what you need to know. Shohei Ohtani, LA.
All the data's there. I'm
That's
happy
it.
for all of the Japanese reporters who moved to the United States and settled in Southern California who now don't have to leave and maybe get a new work visa to live in Toronto. I'm happy for those people as well.
I'm disappointed in Shohei that he couldn't get further away from Ben Verlander.
That's the second time you made that joke to me, and I don't get. Does Ben Verlander live in LA?
I don't know. I would assume that there would be some part of Ohtani that feels compelled to maybe see if going to another country would help.
Maybe Ohtani loves Ben Verlander because all of Japan loves him.
That's true, right? He is a bit like a beetle over there. Ben Verlander, to be clear, not Ohtani.
Not Ohtani. See Ohtani's small potatoes on that side of the world. Alex, another thing happened this week. 25-year-old Juan Soto, who's on pace to have a Ted Williams-like career, was traded for the second time in 17 months.
What are we doing?
And this time, it was to the bad place. It was all fun and games when the Nationals botched it and they traded their generational superstar to the Padres. And he gets to go play with Machado and he gets to go play with Tatis, and the Padres are all in and they're making a push. And look how thrilling this is. Another Preller masterclass. And look what we wrought. What we sowed.
Last week on the pod, I think I don't remember if this was on air or off air, but you asked for my quick reactions to this is prior to the trade being completed, but there were names being thrown around about the prospects that would go over. And I think I said something to the effect of, I literally don't care. I don't know who any of these people are beyond like Michael King. And then that was most
Higashioka shade.
Right. Yes.
Slander.
No. Well, he was not. I think he
Put
was
some
not in
respect
that
on Johnny
initial
Brito's name.
crop of players. But like, I look at this trade and I'm like, for Juan Soto, just to be clear, we're talking about the same Juan Soto, right? The guy who
that's John Soto to you.
Yes, it is. kind of legendary social media Yankees person. Kind of real.
Juan Soto and Trent Grisham headed to the Yankees in exchange for Michael King, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez, Drew Thorpe, and Kyle Higashioka. 4 right-handed pitchers or starting pitching prospects and 1 backup catcher.
Sure.
In exchange for Juan Soto and Trent Grisham, who the Padres are just trying to get rid of as much money as possible. That whole project is cooked, by the way. We need to do like a Padres episode. Just like what went wrong in San Diego in many ways. Okay, that's a weird city to be in. It's a weird city to live in, I think.
Strange vibes.
It's just strange vibes in San Diego, California. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the fact that our long national nightmare has begun.
Mhm.
The Yankees might be fun and good again. And we're just going to have to deal with that. In a way, isn't he like the perfect Yankee? I hate to like make this more palatable to the wider baseball world, but like, isn't his cockiness, his like fresh, clean face, he's like way younger than you expect. He's going to look perfect in the pinstripes. He's left-handed. He's going to hit it to all parts of the ballpark. He's going to hit frustrating short porch home runs. He's going to hit insane light tower bombs to Monument Park. Like, he's going to do it all. The fans are going to love him. The Soto shuffle in pinstripes is going to hit unbelievably hard. I hate to admit it. He's like kind of a perfect Yankee. I don't know if he's going to sign back there. His agent is Scott Boras, who will be discussed on this podcast. And so that means he will hit free agency. But the Yankees will be first in line to talk to him because they'll have him for this past year or for this upcoming year. And that gives them a unique opportunity to pitch him on what the vision is, playing the rest of his career alongside Aaron Judge and taking that mantle from him as like Chief Yankee. I refuse to call it the captain. I just refuse.
I agree that he is the perfect Yankee, parentheses derogatory.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, now I'm seeing like, it's not like I've never liked Yankees before, like there's been plenty of Yankees who I love as players, but becoming a Yankee pulls all of the annoying villain shit out of you and casts it in a different light. And I think that Juan Soto was kind of on the borderline for a lot of people in terms of like how much of his stuff is like cocky and villainous, which is, to be clear, not bad for the game or anything like in this sort of like retrograde sports radio way that people talk about it, but it's fun to dislike. There's stuff about him that's fun to dislike. It's the same way with Bryce Harper, who is another one of my absolute faves, but it's really fun to root against him. And now he will have the most possible people rooting for him and against him. It's perfect. It's kind of perfect.
It is. I'm kind of hyped for it. Like, and yet also, is it good for the game that the biggest stars are being consolidated into like the two biggest markets of the game? Like, maybe not. But
also, is it good for the game that like literally no one else wanted him?
Right. Exactly.
No one else
like
was even seemingly in the running for this.
There are some red flags there, and chiefly maybe that a team wanted to get rid of him in the first place. I think that's a bad place to start from. Also bad, again, when you can't find any suitors. I don't know. I was more like a little viscerally mad about the Soto trade than Ohtani. Ohtani, I was like, thank God, this is amazing, like super team, complete. It's going to make them getting bounced in the NLDS all that much more funny. Like this is great. And we get Ohtani in the playoffs, whatever. Soto, I was like, God fucking damn it.
So funny if this was the first time the Dodgers missed the playoffs in the last like 15 years. Yeah, I was mad about Soto. Still am in some ways. I wanted Ohtani to go to the Dodgers. That was my preferred outcome of any of the other teams that it seemed realistic. I mean, obviously I wanted him to go to the Mets, but I want every good player to go to the Mets. Beyond that, it was Dodgers for me. And I just got to say, Dodgers fans out there, you're welcome.
Yeah, you manifested it. You're taking credit for this one.
I just would like to say my checks have cleared from Dodgers Nation. I have been stumping for them. I have been normalizing Dodgers culture. I've been representing them as the best fan base, best place to see a ball game, best place to play, probably the most satisfying place to be a player 81 times a year. And then all of a sudden, Shohei Ohtani signs with the Dodgers, and I'm just supposed to not take credit for that? He didn't sign with the Phillies, the team that you put your lot in with.
That's true.
So, ye of little power.
So why didn't you will him to the Mets then? If you do have this power,
don't need him.
Right.
Yeah, we want to win fair and square.
Too much. I mean, like I don't want my team spending all that money on him.
Yeah, well, we can't afford it.
Right. Where's it got this? The sportsbook's not built yet.
I have one final question for you before we move on and talk about the Orioles, because we have a long conversation with Jake and Jordan to get to, as I'm sure you guys have seen from the length of this episode. But one final question for you: does baseball need a salary cap? It's checking in.
Yeah, I think they do. Frankly,
Okay.
all these players getting all this money. It's bad for the world. And I think they should, the owners have clearly worked hard to build up their own net worth.
Yeah. And the game. Great.
I don't understand why we're just minting new billionaires now. You know, what has Shohei Ohtani done?
Speaking of new billionaires in the game of baseball, David Rubenstein reportedly in talks to acquire the Baltimore Orioles. John Angelos, no. What's he going to do? How's he going to use this pulpit to reinvent education in America without the O's?
First of all, I just want to say I love the fact that our maybe most defining bit about John Angelos' ownership tenure is like a throwaway line in a New York Times profile about him that mentions his interest in like building an elementary school or something like that. Like that is fucking sick. What a legacy to have.
The whole point of this project for you and I is to like identify and make sure that people know about how coked out all billionaires are, even if they're not taking the drug cocaine. How just the nature of being that makes all of your ideas sound like coked out thoughts. And if John Angelos thinking that he can use the Baltimore Orioles to start a school is not the most coked out thing you've ever heard in your life, then why are we even doing this pod? Why are we even here? What's the point? What was it all for?
It's really fascinating whatever is going down in Baltimore right now. Peter Angelos, who is the, now former chair of the team, indicated that he would like the team to be sold, right? Because he basically is like, we built this up. I want my wife and my family to be able to cash in on this, right? So this is kind of a sentiment that he has expressed privately. And I think John Angelos is like, no, wait, dude, are you kidding? We have the potential to turn this into a cash cow. And he actually, I think, there's been a lot that happened this week because there was also the announcement of a new lease in Baltimore for Camden Yards as well. That was like, I think then maybe put on hold with the news of this potential sale, at which point Angelos called the governor of Maryland and said, no, don't worry, I don't want to sell the team. I'll throw some links in the description. The Baltimore Banner has done some good reporting on this. But interesting note, which is that the team being sold prior to Peter Angelos' death would mean it's subject to like hundreds and millions of dollars in capital gains tax. So
look on your face right now. It's like, that was the first time I wish we did a spot on video.
Regardless of what happens, it's not happening yet.
Oh, man. Great note. By the way, let me just give you a little context on the guy who wants to buy them. He's 74. That's the first thing. He is the co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, which is a global investment firm that manages net assets worth $373 billion. Can I read you my favorite section header on his Wikipedia page?
Please.
Mobile home parks controversy. Who hasn't had a little mobile home parks controversy?
Uh-huh.
You hang around, you're in the game long enough, that's just going to find you.
So what was the controversy?
Rubenstein was publicly criticized for the work of the Carlyle Group, of which he is the chairman, which owns a number of mobile home parks and has been pushing poor people out of their homes by hiking up the rental price.
That's so just good business.
Evicting people from their mobile homes.
Mm-hmm. My favorite bit about the Carlyle Group is that in 2001, they had their annual investment meeting, which happened to take place on September 11th, 2001, and whose guest of honor was Shafiq bin Laden, a member of the bin Laden family, because they had millions of dollars invested in the Carlyle Group. So I'm just going to throw that out there, let it sit. I'm providing no analysis. I'm not pro or against that. I just a little context. That's all.
Do we think that this is the same Carlisle that the dorm that we lived in our sophomore year of college is named after? It's spelled the same.
That's a really good question, actually.
I was trying to look that up actually before we started, but I couldn't find anything definitive. Thank you for providing context. That's what you're here for. He also hosts a TV show and podcast. Do you think we could get him on?
Yeah.
He hosts 2 shows on Bloomberg Television. The David Rubenstein Show Peer-to-Peer Conversations and Bloomberg Wealth with David Rubenstein.
I just want to say, I mean, if we want to have him on, we got to do it now, right? We have to do it before he actually buys the team.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Are you ready to go to our conversation with Jake and Jordan?
Yeah, I am. This is a fun one.
Before we do, on this episode, you will hear most of our conversation, our overrated and underrated segment with Jake and Jordan. If you want some more bonus rounds of that, you can head over to our Patreon feed, where later this week we will be dropping in a bonus episode where we speed rounded a couple extra ones that didn't make it into this episode for length. And we'll talk about whatever happens between now and Thursday on that Patreon bonus episode. You can find that on at patreon.com/tippingpitches if you sign up for our top tier. So without further ado, let's go bring in our friends Jake and Jordan. We are joined by frequent guests, Céspedes Family Barbecue, Jake Mintz, Jordan Shusterman. You know, I don't know if you're the most frequent guests in the history of this podcast, but you're up there. You guys are up there. You're counting some stats, racking them up, trying to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Hello, guys. Hello, hey, guys. Friends. It's great to see you.
It's great to be seen. The best ability is availability, and you can tap us and bring us off the bench at any moment, at any time. We're recording 75 episodes of Baseball Barbacast a week, so we carve out just enough in the schedule for you beautiful folks.
You know, I've been using the phrase, you know, he posts or I post a lot at work, and no one is catching on. They think that I'm talking about like posting on Twitter. And I'm like, guys, get with it. Get with it. This is why I need you guys here. This is why I need to be amongst baseball friends, because that is a great phrase and encapsulates so many good things in life, and no one understands it.
You know, it's a related one that I tried to take from baseball to the larger world that doesn't translate is banged. Like, not in terms of anything sexual remotely, but in terms of canceled, right? Oh, it's raining, so they banged the game. Like, I once was like, oh, yeah, you know, my friend has COVID, so he had to bang dinner. Like, you had to bang dinner?
I agree. That one, like, whereas post people are just confused, they're not uncomfortable. But I agree with you, Bobby. I think there's probably a lot of it is a fantastic phrase that is complimentary in a lot of senses. So I agree.
You can get through your whole life by just posting. That's all you have to do. Show up. just
showing up, man. Just keep on showing up. That's how we view any invite to this podcast. The quality is irrelevant as long as we're here, as long as we're available.
Just come by.
You guys are here for a very special reason. It's to play a little game of overrated or underrated with literally anything tangentially related to the baseball world. You guys have eclectic interests when it comes to baseball, far-reaching, far and wide. And so we thought that you would be great guests. This would be a great idea to have you guys back on to do, since it's been so long since we chatted. 2 years ago, we had a very fun episode of this podcast called The Least Terrible Owners Draft. Alex, would you like to let them know how they did in that? Do you think we should do that before we get into overrated and underrated?
Yes, please. I want to know how we did it.
We can. I don't have the list in front of me, actually, but if I recall correctly, I mean, Bobby, you and I were discussing this offline, and I think the consensus was that we may have wiped the floor with y'all. But I'll leave that for the listeners to decide.
Yeah. So the big yip on our end was drafting Brewers owner Mark Antanasio simply because he looked schlumpy, and we thought that was cute.
Right.
That's
a
loss.
You drafted him first overall.
That's a loss. Like, I'm willing to. I'll eat that.
I think Jake was pounding the table for Mark on that one.
We all make mistakes, friends.
You guys really saved your asses by getting Middleton. I gotta tell you. Here's who you have: Atanasio, Illich, Middleton, John Sherman, and the Learners.
The Learners is the one that really took me out of it, if I'm being quite honest.
Well, we had some Learners bias.
Learner bias.
Was a little bit. It certainly blinded us because they built our synagogue. But, I agree, though. Like, we had the Sherman. I actually stand by the Propane King. I think we got time for that one to kind of come back around.
Let the Propane cook. Let him cook.
Yeah, literally let the man cook. Middleton was such a win. He has emerged as
Middleton
the best
second round,
third round. Third round, Middleton.
So, the only owners you could argue are better than him. The only ones you could argue are the Dodgers' unlimited pool of money.
Yeah, we got them.
The Mets' unlimited pool of money.
We got them too.
And then the Yankees probably not.
Yeah, but we got them too, just for the record.
Yeah, no, the Steinbrenners.
Wow. Congrats to Bobby and Alex for drafting the Yankees, Dodgers, and Mets. Congratulations, guys.
We got the owners on our side. That's famously what everybody says about the Tipping Pitches podcast is like they got the owners with them behind
the billionaires have something going on over
sure.
there. Yeah.
So
exactly.
The one story I have a story that is on my to write list that I may never write, so I'm going to share it right now. So John Middleton, his money comes from Black and Mild cigars, and I want to know the last time he had one. Or is it like a don't get high on your own supply situation?
He does look like a man who may traffic in those every once in a while.
He does. Just to let the record show, we also got Peter Seidler and Bill DeWitt. Wild choice. Bill DeWitt. Wild choice. Can't believe we did that.
Peter
Even
Seidler, great choice.
It's like I was under some kind of spell. I don't recognize the person who was stumping for Bill DeWitt on that pod.
I'm realizing, did we do that literally a week before the Rangers signed Corey Seager and Marcus Semien?
It had to be.
Yes.
Right? I'm pretty sure it was right before that.
I was wary of Ray Davis because of his participation in the Keystone Pipeline project.
Right.
Yeah, but that still would have been the right. That still should have been higher on the board for all the same. But we just had no idea. I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because otherwise I can't imagine why they wouldn't have been, unless we were being way too cognizant of moral malfeasance.
Yeah, too politically correct, some might say.
Maybe when we do the worst owners draft, the thing that we the whole time we were recording that pod, we were just like, we're not here to do the worst owners, because we always talk about those guys. We always do. We had to caveat it 1,000 times. Maybe you guys can win that one. That's not what we're here to do today. We're here to do overrated, underrated. Have you guys
properly rated? Also an option, right?
Properly
Also
rated
an
is an
option.
option.
Yeah.
Yes, properly rated is an option. You guys got a list? You guys ready to do this?
Oh yeah. I'm checking it twice.
I definitely have 3 I feel really good about, and then we'll see how interesting, how far we go from there.
So the way that this is going to work is that each one of us is just going to present a topic in the forum, and then we're just going to discuss whether it's overrated or underrated. You can share off the bat what you think about it if you'd like, or you can just kind of let it eat.
Yeah. Some of these I'm looking for consensus here. I'm not even sure how strongly I feel. I when I was thinking about these, I was like, ooh, that's a fun one. I want to hear discussed. So
this is the marketplace of ideas, Jordan. This is where we come to reach consensus. 4 white baseball podcasters on a Zoom.
These are the opinions that mean the most. So
this is America.
Hopefully, at the very least, we could spark intrigue and maybe even outrage from the fine listeners of Tipping Pitches,
or enrage and outrigue.
Yes,
that's an option as well.
An
option as well. Jake, I think I kind of want you to go first, honestly.
All right, I'll go first. Jackie Robinson.
Ooh, Jackie Robinson. Okay, so trying to think about on what scenario we would land on overrated for Jackie Robinson. Like, I guess if you don't know anything about history and you pull up his baseball reference page and you just heard that he's a baseball player and you're like, all right, like, what's the big deal? The guy only, but then even then I'm struggling, right? I'm like, oh,
he only played 10 years in the big leagues.
What the heck? How good could he have really been, right?
Yeah. He played the same fewer big league seasons than Seth Smith.
Yeah.
Tough.
I would probably say he bunted way too much.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And I
Analytics
know, like,
hated Jackie Robinson. Quote, Jordan Shusterman.
yeah.
28 sacrifices.
What is Jackie Robinson, who had endured so much to get to that point? What the hell is he doing trying to help his teammates? Are you kidding?
Swing
28
away.
times he was advancing runners. This dude should have been swinging for the fences every time because he earned it, and he definitely would have hit more than 12 home runs.
His teammates are like looking the other way while he's subjected to just the worst things in the history of the world, and then he's like, "I'll move him over. I'll move him over to second. It's worth it."
Outrageous. So in that sense, otherwise, I mean, eternally underrated.
I think the reason I chose this was to obviously hammer home the underrated aspect of it. Because I think, I don't want to say, like, again, I'm not going to sit here as a caucasic individual and say too much attention is thrown on to Jackie Robinson, the person. But I do genuinely believe that, like, his accomplishments off the field at times overshadow how freaking unbelievable of a baseball player he was. And then his talents as a baseball player sometimes overshadow a lot of the things he did off the field, particularly in the later end of his life. And so there are like 75 different things about Jackie Robinson that would have made him an historic and monumental person. And I think too often he broke the color barrier, full stop. And like, that's why kids in school know about him, you know? So I think Jackie Robinson, maybe the most underrated thing in baseball, is why I brought this up to begin with.
I feel like MLB has a huge hand in this, honestly, because MLB is content to talk about Jackie Robinson within a very small box.
Oh, yeah.
And afraid of talking about him in ways that pierce outside of that box. And so therefore, like, his whole career kind of just gets shrunk down to that moment, because that was like the championing moment. And everything after that was kind of like, that was like one huge step forward for the baseball world, like the collective comfort of the baseball world and the fans and the teams and Major League Baseball. And then they took like 2 or 3 or 4 steps back in the immediate aftermath. And they don't like you to talk about that part. And so on Jackie Robinson Day every year, we just hear about this huge, phenomenal triumph. And then the rest of his career is sort of like shrouded in this fog of mystery about what actually happened from that moment on.
Yes.
Because they're afraid that if you talk about that career in its totality and how good he was on the field and what kind of person he was afterwards, that you're going to have to talk about the fact that, like, people were not acting well. And that is a stain on MLB's legacy.
I highly recommend to anybody who's not read it, I Never Had It Made, which is Jackie's autobiography. There is so little like baseball in that in a way that I find to be very refreshing. There's a lot of baseball, but relatively less than you would expect.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, like, if you start talking about his legacy, it all of a sudden becomes very implicating on Major League Baseball itself, right? It's like, he broke the color barrier. Logical next question might be, who put the color barrier there?
Right. It's like an episode
who had a hand in that?
It's like an episode of Jimmy Neutron where Jimmy creates the problem and then he fixes it at the end of the episode. And then everyone's like, you did it, Jimmy. And no one is like, why were we stuck inside of a goat brain in the first place?
Right.
That Jimmy had to get us out of here. Why were all the pants attacking? Well, because Jimmy did it.
The second logical question is, how did that go when he broke the color barrier? And the answer to that is also not very good and doesn't reflect very well on the people in power at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess the reason I brought this up, one, was to laugh at the idea of 4 white guys trying to argue that Jackie Robinson was overrated on a podcast is like hilarious to me.
That's what we have the Hall of Fame for.
I know, exactly. I just thought that was a funny idea, but also to prove a point that he is incredibly underrated. I will kick the rock to you, Alex.
Oh, to me, let's do it. All right, first up on my list, high definition Jumbotrons. The tricked out Jumbotrons with all the new stats. You've got the big video board where they show the highlights during games. It's kind of in vogue among teams at the moment. There was much ado around the new Mets Jumbotron. So I'm throwing it out to y'all. Jumbotrons, overrated, underrated?
Well, the first place to start is they keep getting bigger. And I do wonder, after seeing the Mets one in person for the first time, when I was there for the Lidon series, I was like, man, like that is so large. And there's something about the Mets one with it being directly straight away, which not all of them are, right? Some of them, you have them in left or right where it doesn't feel as distracting or almost menacing.
Or both. I love when there's one in left and one in right.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say that like part of me does wonder, it's just a constant opportunity for teams to like spend their money not on players, which is funny, is to build giant video boards. But like, I don't know. I've never seen one where as they keep growing and keep getting flashier and stuff, I'm never like mad about it. But I'm just like, whoa. It can be, I guess, it maybe has reached a level of distraction that I guess is maybe what you're potentially getting. But what do you think, Jake?
No, I think they're properly rated. I think that there's a new standard, and whenever you go to a stadium where the video board is kind of meh, like Arizona, when I went there this year for the first time, it's kind of a meh video board. For me, selfishly, as someone in the press box,
to be clear, you were there for the baseball games, not to check to see if the votes were counted correctly. Right?
Well, I just thought I'd like kill two birds with one stone. So, it was just made more sense. But the votes, I would just say stop the count. But anyway, it's much easier. Like it was a difficult park to see the stats on. Like it was less intuitive. And so that made for a worse experience for me. However, there is a limit here. Okay. There's a limit to how big these Jumbotrons should be. You know how when we're talking about skyscrapers, the terminology for skyscraper height is like tall, super tall, mega tall, big boy tall. I don't think we should call the Mets thing a Jumbotron and like a little rinky-dink one at the A's stadium, respectfully, a Jumbotron as well. Like, I think we need new terminology for this if we're going to continue down this path of society.
Right. The Overton window is shifting on Jumbotrons.
Right. Exactly. Is Jumbotron like Kleenex? Like, is that a brand that started this whole thing?
I believe so.
And then that's why we call it that still, but that's probably not the brand that's still making the Mets Jumbotron, most likely.
What is the Tron? What's the Tron part of Jumbo? Does anyone know?
I'm just sorry. I just found the Wikipedia page list of largest video screens. And just before you guys look this up, where do you think Citi Fields ranks? This is in the world.
In the world.
This is in the world. Largest screens.
23rd.
Okay, so
23rd.
23rd. Very good guess. 27th.
Wow.
27th. It does appear to be the largest
27 screens, bro.
In a baseball stadium. We have some football stadiums on here. Now, unsurprisingly,
can I guess? For me, whenever I guess something that's really big that we don't know about, I'm gonna say North Korea has got a big ass Jumbotron.
Ooh, that's a good question. So it's not listed here. I'm sure they think they have the largest screen, but
Kim Jong Un's secret Jumbotron.
Dude, you've never seen it. You don't know. Go ahead, Jordan.
Do they know about the Las Vegas Sphere in Pyongyang? Because that is number one by a lot.
Does that count as a Jumbotron? I mean, I guess it is
a screen.
It's an LED screen, and it's just because it's round doesn't mean it's not a screen.
This is perfect. Thank you so much for bringing this up on the podcast, because now this gives Alex and I an excuse to use business money to go to the Sphere. We investigated the Sphere.
This is market research. That's all.
So wait, to be clear, Jumbotron is a brand owned by Sony, and the largest Jumbotron ever was in Rogers Center in Toronto.
Oh, so Jumbotron this is like a Kleenex situation? This is actually fascinating.
Yeah.
Because most of these other big ones are different things. They're not Jumbotron. Like, we're still calling it something that it isn't. That's
Diamond Vision.
There is a dispute among Mitsubishi and Sony over who invented the Jumbotron.
Oh.
How is that a dispute? Whoever fucking sold it first. That's who invented it.
Dude, I would watch a Showtime documentary, like dramatic docuseries about who invented the Jumbotron.
Like
all that intrigue.
The BlackBerry movie, but for the Jumbotron.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I came into this thinking that Jumbotrons might be slightly overrated in their size and stature, and now I think I'm coming the other way. Now I think maybe we're not leaning too hard into Jumbotron lore.
Because here's what I'm also a sucker for is, plug in the HDMI to the City Field Jumbotron so we can play Mario Kart. Like that never gets old. Never gets old, right? The notion that screen is really technically not actually different than the screen that I'm looking at right now in my office is very funny, right? So in that sense,
it's all just pixels, bro.
Yeah. Now, again, it depends on the kind of game you're playing, because I imagine, Super Smash Bros. Professionals will tell you that the lag, the input there is you cannot be playing on a screen that big. Lag. You're going to be having all kinds of issues if you're trying to, throw in some real, wombo combo type moves. But in general, the premise that you could use any screen like that for anything is delightful. So in that sense, underrated. But I agree with Jake. I'm landing on properly rated.
You could play like N64 Mario Kart on there. You don't have to worry about the lag when it comes to that. Like, we're just vibing on that. I mean, we don't need to do a competitive Super Smash Bros. Tournament on that screen, though it would be pretty hilarious. But you probably get away with the lag on that front. Well, I guess my final word on the Jumbotron is that I don't know how. I have a hard time gauging how the rest of the world rates them. So I don't know if they're overrated or underrated. Yeah. I've never just been like people are just amazed by them. So I guess that means they're pretty highly rated. The amount of people that I had talk to me about the Mets' new Jumbotron, I was like, you guys care about this? Like, this is a thing? This breaks through to the rest of the world? Right. This is so bizarre. I'll go next.
I agree with that.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
The first thing that I would like to pose to the group is MLB TV.
The most underrated. I'm going underrated beyond belief.
See, this is why I wanted you guys on for this, because I know that you guys are mainlining MLB TV in the top 0.1% of people.
Okay, now I understand there's a healthy number of people listening to this that the first thing when you said that, or when I said underrated, is, but what about the blackouts? And you're right. That's fine. That's true.
That's not the product.
That's fine. That's not the product. That is an unfortunate, side issue. Big problem, right? But the product that Major League Baseball has produced, that is MLB TV, is so good and such an absurdly good deal when you consider the number of baseball games that you can watch. It is like not even a freaking question. Now, I understand we are in the unique position as people who get to work in baseball for a living. We can kind of always be watching baseball and it's not whatever, right? But at the same time, so I know that people don't necessarily, like, the number of games and use that we get to watch is maybe beyond what the average person can realistically or wants to realistically consume. But I think even if you adjust it down, it's a steal beyond belief. And it's not that complicated. I think it's an incredible product. And by the way, also having dipped my toe into such similar products in other leagues like NBA League Pass, which absolutely stinks
and never works.
It's not even close. It is an incredible product and one of the best things that our stupid league has ever done by a factor of 1 million.
They didn't even do it. They just bought it from someone else made it.
But they didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
It is not. I know there have been moments with some slight changes over the years where it's like, oh, they changed that. I don't like it. In general, it's not even close. It's freaking incredible.
When something's good, let it be good. We got enough wrong with this planet.
Yeah. Alex, what's your take on MLB TV?
Yeah, I think I get turned off by all the sort of little accessories in there. Sometimes the like box score pops down if I'm watching my phone and I'm like, what is going on? Again, big UI UX guy over
Look,
here.
brother, man, if you can't control the horse, don't ride it.
Right, I know that might be a user error problem, but I will agree that the fundamental core product of broadcasting baseball games to whatever device you're on works. It works very well. Like I don't know that I would go so far as to say it's underrated, but it feels it's good. It is one of the few good things I think we have in the sport.
I think that This is my take about MLB TV. I think that the things that people are most mad about it for are like the secondary aspects of it. So like I'm mad because there's no MLB TV app on Samsung's interface like, that I can't put it on my TV. But MLB didn't decide that. Samsung decided that.
And that's because you want to experience MLB TV more.
Exactly.
Like that's the thing. So,
let me cook. Also, the fact that you can just have any broadcast booth in the entire United States besides your own, besides your own, for the record,
besides your,
it's pretty amazing.
Besides the one you want to listen to,
like the fact that I would have developed opinions about Don Orsillo and Joe Davis living in New York. That's amazing. The internet.
Previous generations could never.
Exactly. Previous generations would be like, who's that? Who's
my
that?
grandfather would walk to school both ways uphill in the snow and in typhoons in Brooklyn. And he never made it through his childhood hearing.
He'd be like, did you guys catch that Jackie Robinson sack bunt last night? That was sick.
That he would have heard. But I'm saying like he didn't hear like Joe Castiglione up in Boston spitting fire, you know?
Exactly.
We live in a different era.
This is Tipping Pitch's pro MLB TV era.
I know.
This segment
is going
brought
to be
to you
quite the shock to our listeners.
Don't bring Jake and Jordan on if you don't want irrational positivity, okay? You're the one who said, Bobby, you're the one who called Jackie Robinson overrated, is all I'm saying.
That's what I heard.
Check the transcript. Check the transcript.
I will say, World Series OPS,
leaving a little bit to
leaving something to be desired. I don't know.
Jordan.
How badly would he really want to win? All right, my first topic, before I go a little bit more baseball, but again, more of the baseball going experience. This is something that I feel like Jake and I, we've talked about and had the experience of having gone to a lot of big, important games. And what do they do at big, important games? The flyover.
I have that on my list. I have it on my list.
I had a feeling, but I am very excited to hear Bobby and Alex's take on this.
This is one of the most overrated things in American society.
Of course.
Perfect.
Without a doubt.
Just in the baseball world. It offers nothing of value to anybody except the Department of Defense.
100%. And I will say, as someone who was once in Cleveland when the Blue Angels were just going for it, I mean, it was so... have you guys ever been around when the full-blown air show? Have you guys ever experienced this?
I have, yeah.
I had.
It is one of the most absurd, loud, like this. The noise is so again, you think about a flyover and you that 2.5 seconds when it cut, but then for hours on end with at unpredictable intervals, especially if you're just in a part of the city where you can't actually see what's happening and you're just hearing these ridiculous noises. Not to mention, again, I know we can talk about the expense part of this that is, abhorrent. I get that. But try to
what are we going to spend money on?
Experience.
We're going to spend money on big LED screens and fucking fighter jets.
Exactly, Bobby.
Exactly.
Can't afford Ohtani, but we can afford fighter
Jake,
jets.
I'll kick it to you. Before I say anymore.
I got a rebuttal. Bobby Wagner.
Yep.
Am I correct?
I know it's coming.
Am I correct that you enjoyed Top Gun Maverick?
You're goddamn right I did. You know why I enjoyed Top Gun Maverick?
Why, Bobby Wagner?
Compelling story that I could sit and watch and enjoy.
Bobby,
I'm not looking at the fighter jets like this looks like Top Gun Maverick.
Bobby, shut the fuck up.
No, that's actually
you
a pretty funny
watched
response.
Top Gun Maverick and you were like, boy, that plot was superb. Fuck out of here, dude.
Dude, the fighter
way.
jets, the flyover is like if Top Gun Maverick, they put an iPhone on the ground with the selfie camera up and you saw it go over one time. That's
Bobby,
a flyover. That
have you
would
ever
be a bad movie. I would have rated that movie a 0.5 star on Letterboxd.
I understand, Bobby. I understand. Have you ever been to a flyover?
Have I ever seen a flyover?
In person at a sporting event?
Yes, but never the full Jordan is talking about. It's opening day. We're having a fleet flyover.
Again,
okay. Can I finish my point?
Yeah.
I think it is important here to hold multiple thoughts in your head at the same time. Okay.
Okay.
Is this a good use of taxpayer money? No, it is not. No. Is it propping up the military industrial complex? Yeah, absolutely. Do planes go brrr when they fly over your head? And do they look sick and make a lot of cool noise and amp you up? Yes, they do. And for that reason, they're properly rated.
My biggest beef is the difference between the flyover being executed perfectly and not does very much contribute. Now, that being said, like that's part of it when you're thinking about like, wow, like how are they actually doing this? Like what it takes once you ignore how much of a waste of money it is, all those things, that's fine. I can't refute any of that. But when you think about the premise of these planes flying ridiculously fast and flying over this very small amount of space when this person is singing this part of the national anthem, I am intrigued by that sequencing of events. However, when it goes wrong and they are too early or the song is over, now you're really angry and you're like, come on, now I just heard this loud noise at this weird
greatest military in the history of humanity.
Yeah, that makes me feel bad. That makes me feel bad. Like, how did we get Osama if we couldn't coordinate the flyover? You know?
But then I'm like, is this the singer's fault? Right now, I'm wondering,
right? Did they hold the note too long?
Where does the blame lie?
So while we're on this topic,
it's like how it was never DeGrom's fault when the Mets lost.
Exactly. The national anthem in the regular season overrated, in the playoffs underrated. That's my take.
Again, I'm
incredibly overrated.
This isn't an anthem commentary for me.
That was a little bonus content for you.
We're talking about the bonus
speed round.
Okay. I understand. I'm just saying, national anthem every single day in the regular season is ridiculous, right? They don't do that in Premier League games in Europe like they do the anthem before like international games. That makes sense. In the playoffs, though, love it. Love it. Playoffs anthem, amazing. Proud to be an American. Regular season anthem, hate it. Like moving to Europe.
All right, you want to just do anthem as a over? No, Jake, back there.
Jake,
sorry,
next.
I'm also improperly rated for
the
properly
flyovers.
Yeah,
but Jake, back to you. Unless I assume you guys are both overrated for.
Yeah, overrated.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm pro using jet fuel, just kind of with no remorse. Just burn that shit. Right? Like it's gotta go somewhere.
Exactly.
Wow, one Kissinger gone, a new one rises.
Okay.
Just do what Citi Field does and place your stadium next to an airport. You get flyovers all fucking day.
Exactly. Dude,
can they do flyovers?
Their flyover last year on opening day, the fucking roof was closed for the flyover. Can they do it?
Can they do a flyover at Citi Field, or is the airspace too precious?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I don't think they can.
Yeah,
I never thought about that. They have to have. No, I don't know.
Well, the good thing they're never in the World Series. Yeah. All right, back to me.
Let's ask someone that was you were at the 2015 World Series, weren't you?
No.
Oh, you weren't. Okay,
let's ask someone that was. A sophomore in college. I had $63 to my name.
I'm actually curious. We should find out. I know who we can ask, Jake. I definitely know who we can ask about that. All right, but Jake, you're back to you.
Pete Alonso. You can ask Pete Alonso about that.
Overrated.
About the Mets in 2015.
Overrated or underrated? The 2020 MLB season.
Ooh, that's kind of juicy.
This is a good one.
The 2020 MLB season in its entirety.
It wasn't very entire.
I want to do that so bad, but it's funny. That was a funny joke. So, okay, present some data points for us, Jake.
Trevor Bauer won the Cy Young.
That's what you start with?
It was you asked for. Okay. You didn't say present uplifting data points. You said present data points. Trevor Bauer won the Cy Young. We had baseball while we were all stuck inside.
True.
Okay, that's a data point. There was Jack Flaherty throwing a bullpen into his mattress.
Yep.
There was MLB completely mishandling the entire situation. There was Justin Turner on the field having COVID after the World Series.
There was awesome. Cardboard
all the empty stadium stuff. There was Tom Bredeman. That was a data point.
Wow, that was that
Nick
year?
Castellanos. That was that year.
So that's just one that happened during that time that could have happened during any other season.
That is true. That is true.
That would be
I'm just
one.
Thinking of
it did happen during that. I will say my experience recently with the 2020 season.
Yoenis just disappearing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned him because that's an example of a player where that's the last time we saw him play Major League Baseball. And I've had a couple experiences recently where I've just like been looking at careers and I've been like, holy shit, like that guy played in 2020. Ryan Braun played for the Brewers in 2020. That broke my brain.
I refuse to believe that, actually.
Yeah. 39 games.
I'll break your brain with one. Evan Longoria played for the Diamondbacks in 2023.
Okay. But again, like this is 2020 for me. It has broken us in so many ways. It's not just the stats, right? Dom Smith 160 OPS plus or whatever. Like you can pick those. But to Jake's point, like when you find those stats, particularly like the achievements, you reference Trevor Bauer, does that make me feel good or does that make me feel bad that these small sample seasons occurred?
It will never cease to amaze me how much of an unforced error the fact 60 games was. Like 60 games. They could have at least played half the season. They could have at least played 81.
80 was so possible.
Yeah, it was so achievable. So achievable. And they just, MLB totally botched it. Weirdly, though, I think that I'm going to say underrated. Like the fact that it was still somehow kind of entertaining, even though it was bizarre and they're like piping in crowd noise and with the fake cardboard cutout fans and all of that stuff. And the announcers every game had to talk about how real it felt. They were like, this is real baseball. And every single game was really weird. But for me, I think the baseball was still pretty good. And so I think it's underrated because I think nobody ever even considers it a realistic thing. Also, the fact that the Dodgers won is just objectively funny. Like that is really funny.
Right. I do like that was not just that it's their only one within this run, because that's the funny part in my opinion, but like they were the best team too. It was like the one time everything could have been as weird as possible and the best team did win. And that's why it was like, this is what it takes for baseball to spit out a normal outcome, is for everything else to be as, screwed up as possible. So
yeah, there's something about the possibility of that season too that always just lingers in my mind. I'm just like, would Shane Bieber have struck out 400 people? Probably not. I don't think so.
Yeah.
and yet.
But the awards are one thing, but again, it's like those amazing seasons just below that really blow your mind, because the awards will kind of sustain as we remember those things and we remember some of the postseason things, right? But boy, were there a lot of incredible seasons but they weren't seasons, right? They weren't seasons. They weren't, to call them seasons is a farce. And so that's the part where every time I say, wow, he did that during that season, I still have to be like, no, he didn't. That's not what happened. So in that sense, I don't know. I enjoy a lot about it, but I'm going to say overrated because I think people point to it as a real data point way too often. In that sense, that's a good.
I'm going to say properly rated because
the same thing you've said for everything so far.
Why don't you just go fuck off? All right, except for Jackie. Jackie's underrated. Here's why. Everything Jordan said is true, and I'm leaning overrated. But Ahmed Rosario hit a walk-off home run in Yankee Stadium as a member of the Mets. And so that can't be overrated. And so it's correctly rated.
I'm just like looking like the Rangers had the worst offense in the league by a lot. By a lot somehow, right? Like that wasn't that long ago. But yeah, there's just a lot of pretty tremendous. I guess the Pirates were worse. But yeah, it's 60 games. 60 games happens, we have 60 game samples all the time, but this one will live forever on its own.
One thing that's generally happening, like in larger society with things that happened in 2020, is that they feel like now you just get to carry them with you still. Meaning like if it happened in 2020 and it got cut short and it was weird and no one talked about it or no one acknowledged it properly, then we could just get to still pretend like it's happening. Because I was at the movies this morning and AMC celebrated their 100-year anniversary in 2020, 1920 to 2020, and where no one was going to the movie theaters at all. So now they just still put that logo up before every movie. That was 3 years ago. Like how long do we get to coast off of that? And I do feel like a little bit of that happened in the baseball world where they were like, that was supposed to be our time. This was supposed to be our year, whatever. Like I was supposed to have a career year that year, and people are just kind of still coasting off of them. And that was 3 years ago. A lot of turnover on the Dodgers roster since then.
I think it's kind of sick that it's just a question mark in baseball history. That like you can paste your own ideals onto about the sport at that time. It was such a fever dream. Like the games were coming back and we'd be like, all right, the Yankees are playing the Nationals. Let's go, everyone. First pitch is in 4 minutes and half the team has COVID. Like
it's also like will literally forever be a demarcation just in time.
Right.
I think a lot of it too, when we think about like the juiced ball and stuff like 17 and 19 and how ridiculous home runs got in 2019. And then like there is, I don't know how long it will take for us to like start acknowledging in the way that like, I do wonder if like in 20, 30 years, you know, when we're on Baseball Reference, you know how like when you stat head something, you search like they refer to different eras. Like I do wonder if one of the eras will end in 2019 in that sense. Or there's, you know, there's a few other ways you could kind of demarcate it. But anyway, yeah, overrated.
Do you remember when people were like, oh, 2020 being only 60 games is really going to hurt Mike Trout's chances of becoming the greatest player ever and amassing the most WAR over the course of his career in the history of baseball. And then, I
stood by to take at the time, but it's pretty.
Well,
bleak.
I think everybody did, but now it's looking a lot different.
Alex, what's your next topic?
Next topic that I'll put forth for the group to consider: overrated, underrated, retired numbers.
Underrated. I love moments in the sun. I love get people getting their flowers while they can still smell them.
Mm-hmm.
I love ceremonial commemoration. Retiring a number is an excuse to have someone back out and give them a day to have the fans cheer their name again. Like Barry Bonds' jersey retirement. Oh, yeah. That was fascinating theater.
That's now, a good yeah.
I think some teams are too precious with him. You know, like the Orioles are going to face a real conundrum here where they only have Hall of Famers numbers retired. So that's Earl Weaver, Frank and Brooks Robinson, not related, Cal Ripken, Eddie Murray. Did I name them all? Earl Weaver, Jim Palmer. So they have 6, right? And like Adam Jones is exactly the type of player who's not a Hall of Famer, but you retire that guy's number. You know what I mean? So I'm fascinated. I like thinking about that. I think it's fun. So underrated.
It is interesting. You learn about the different organizations because the time, like when they do it, is very different for each players. And that can tell you a lot about how kind of high and mighty organizations think they are, which sometimes is a good thing. But sometimes it's like you roll your eyes and you're like, nah, screw it. Like, let's just retire a bunch of numbers. And in a way that isn't like the Yankees because they had 500 Hall of Famers before 1970, you know?
Right.
That's in that sense, but I don't know. You brought it up. Where are you leaning one way or the other?
I mean, a part of me wants to say overrated because I think proximity to the Yankees gives a little bit of bias, but I do think them as an exercise of celebrating a team's history is a really fascinating way to sort of bring folks back into the fold. I don't know that it's necessarily the only way. A lot of people are like, oh, like this player's done. They meant something to the organization, like retire the number. And I don't know that has to be the first sort of route to like celebrating someone who was important to your team. But I do value there's value there. So I think they're maybe slightly underrated.
I think they are overrated. I think that the concept is wholesome and interesting. Like the concept that because this person was so great while with your organization wearing this number, that it would just be wrong for anyone else. It would just feel wrong for anyone else to wear that number. Like to me, like that's what retiring a number is. If you want to talk about like drafting or like taking this person into your team's Hall of Fame or whatever, because every team has that bullshit too. They just don't put the numbers up for all of those players. Then like that's one thing. But to me, like just because a guy was good for a while and a fun guy to root for, it doesn't mean that no one in the future of that organization should get to wear that number. So I think that retiring numbers is actually overrated. That person should also be like a special type of person where it would suck if an unspecial type of person was wearing that jersey number again. Meaning like if Hunter Strickland wanted to wear number 17 for the Mets, like that would be fucking bad. We should not let that happen. So yes, Keith's number should be retired.
But I think that like the players element, this is another great example of like we make shit up as fans that we assume the players care about in some cases. Sometimes there probably are players who are like, I am the best. I gave so much to this organization. No one should wear my jersey number, right? But I bet half of them don't give a shit, right? They're not thinking, they might tune in and be like, oh, look, this random reliever is wearing my number. That's pretty funny. But then the other half are like, brutally disrespected and are just like would then become pissed at their old team. So, but we assume that every guy thinks that like this is the greatest honor one could have, and that part is almost certainly overrated.
Yeah, it's going to be so funny when the Yankees retire number 99, which is such a joke number to begin with. It's going to be so funny. No one can ever wear 99 again. That's going to be great.
Will happen. Bobby, back to you.
Definitely going to happen. Next thing that I would like to pose is robot umpires.
What they are now, or what they will be?
Their ability.
To
call a fair version of the game.
I can't
That's a very loaded question.
I can't decide.
I want to hear what you guys have to say.
I'm gonna say probably, because I can't decide if are we talking about like how good is the technology or the premise, the concept of the game being called perfectly, because that is its own concept that we could argue about. As for the actual technology,
well, I think that the technology's goal is to call a 100% perfect game. So I think that.
Okay, well, I'm going to go
think about it.
The technology, I'm going to say, is underrated because I think that I don't think a large section of fans understand not even necessarily how accurate, but how quick and seamless it is already. And in that sense, I think that I think people have not fully understood the degree to which you wouldn't even notice a lot of these games. And if done properly, there's like a good way that it works. And in that sense, that is like a legitimate technological achievement that has happened even in the last 5 or so years that maybe I'm even impressed by. So in that sense, I would say underrated.
Now, I think having an entirely perfect game called is uninteresting and removes various components from the fabric of the sport that I quite like. Pitch framing, arguments with arguing with umpires is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's entertaining as hell.
Yeah.
And we would lose some of that. I think each team should get 3 challenges per game and throw them fucking red hanky on the field, whatever you want to do. But I would say the unimpeded insertion of robo-umps into the game is overrated. The thoughtful insertion of robo-umps into the game is underrated.
Alex,
so it depends, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's properly rated.
It's properly rated.
Right.
That's why I'm a hedge fund manager.
You're a good risk analyst.
Call me Austin Hedges.
You got any more in the chamber?
Jakey the hedge dog.
I do think that the idea of the perfectly called game is overrated. I think it's an aspiration that isn't necessary, that undercuts a certain part of the sport that has been there for a century. Now, Bobby might come back to me and say, okay, well, what about the DH? You could argue that does the same thing.
You could. You sure could.
But to your point, Jake, I think removing the human element of umpires is like a net negative for the sport. I am willing to concede that I do think the technology is like people are upset that it's not 100% perfect already, and that may be an unfair characterization, but it just feels unnecessary to me. I still don't understand, I think, why we haven't tried getting better umpires first before just automating their jobs away entirely.
Well,
underrated Hoberg.
That's also the really sad part. Like when you say try to get better umpires, like the better umpires are the ones that are already being replaced in the minors. That's the craziest part.
Right.
Those are the ones that whenever they come up, it's like, oh yeah, all the best umps are like 34 years old. Like what a freaking shock,
Yeah.
Sorry if that's ageist, but it's not complicated. Like anything public side that is tracking how good umps are at calling balls and strikes, there is a direct correlation between have you been in the league for 35 years? And have I never heard of you? It goes in the other direction if you want it good umps. So
I
almost feel like replacing.
I almost feel like this question, the real question being asked here is umpires union overrated or underrated in their role in the sport.
Way underrated, bro. They are throwing around some weight. Umpires union is powerful.
They are truly like, you cannot get rid of me.
Don't tread on me, sir.
Is admirable. I definitely agree with that.
I think it actually might surprise you guys. I think that the technology is underrated. Mm-hmm. I like the existence of the ABS and how it calls games and how fast it could function is underrated. What I think is overrated is the idea that MLB is going to be able to implement this in a way that makes sense or doesn't fuck up repeatedly. Okay. Like they find ways to make mountains out of molehills all the time with things that are much simpler than a technology that will affect literally every pitch of every single game. Now, was I a little bit buoyed by the fact that the pitch clock seemed to work pretty well and was not a total nightmare in terms of implementation in the major leagues like a lot of us thought it would be? Yeah, maybe. But also, that could be a broken clock is right twice a day. You know, they might screw this up royally.
Fair enough. I'm pro challenge system. Pretty easy.
Me too.
My next topic, you just hinted at unions and whatnot. I'm going to go pretty hard labor here. Scott Boras is the topic. Scott Boras. Bobby Wagner, is Scott Boras overrated, underrated, properly?
Jordan, I didn't think anyone could provide a more fuego prompt than Jackie Robinson, but you've done it, my friend.
Bobby, what do you think?
I think Scott Boras is perfectly rated. Like, I think he is the most properly rated person in the entire baseball world. He gets so much credit all the time, constantly, from all corners of the baseball world, and he signs the biggest clients and gets them the most money. I think he's a pretty textbook properly rated case. Now, is he overexposed? Yeah. Is he oversampled in the world? Did we talk about him too much? Yes. But we also rate him correctly. He is the best agent getting the players the most money.
I think something that is underrated is how much other agents fucking hate him. Like, I think that, right, Jordan, we talk to agents from time to time, and the overall level of disdain for Boras is so funny. Some of it is legitimate because he takes up so much air.
Yeah.
And when he says something, people take it as gospel. But there is undeniably an element of jealousy that goes along with that, right? That he is the best at the thing and people want to be him, right?
Right. He is the ultimate example, and I'll kick to you, Alex, of in the agent space, don't like it, play better, right? I mean, like, the guy, like, what are you supposed to say? It's not even that, like, because you say, like, oh, he has the best clients. Okay, yeah, sure. But how many contracts do we need to see him get for guys that, like, are good or really good, and we're still like, oh my God, right? Like,
215 for Eric Fetty, baby.
This happens so at all levels, right? At
Fetty
all levels.
Wap.
While we're recording this, Austin Hedges, one of the worst baseball hitters in baseball history, just got $4 more million guaranteed dollars from a team in Cleveland that doesn't have any money. Like, that's the thing. That's why, like, when I see those, I'm like, I actually still think we're not totally understanding how good this guy is. But
I will say this:
when we start leaning into overexposed and some of the elements of it, that, I mean, I'm also interested in from the standpoint of, like, we, of course, as a pro late whatever, no one's going to say he's doing a bad job. But the people that argue that there are some elements that are damaging to other parts of the sport because of the way that he acts and the way that he talks and all these things, that's a bigger conversation. But that is part of the trying to decide whether, rated, overrated, underrated. But Alex, what do you? Yeah,
that I think is actually really true though. Like, the fact that Boras won't even look at some kind of guys because, like, he doesn't think that they're going to be the type of client that he wants to represent. They're not going to be the type to, like, hold out, play tough, go to free agency every time. Like, but I think that people understand that now. Like, the evolving understanding of Boras is that he is that. So he is almost somewhat of, like, a known quantity, which is why I leaned immediately into properly rated. His, like, enmeshing into the PA, I feel some type of way about that we have discussed in fits and starts on the pod over the years. Like, I think that is pretty existentially bad for labor that Scott Boras is like setting the tone and he's sort of like judge, jury, and executioner on how the market is functioning at this moment. That's weird to me. That shouldn't be that way. But
yeah, I do think that like that his visibility, his exposure has made him that sort of de facto like representative of like the market in the the labor market, more so you could argue than a guy like Tony Clark, right? Who is leading the union, but when Scott Boras opens his mouth, everyone listens. I think that his puns are a little overrated, and the intern who writes them is underrated. I think I want to see more shine given to the team who workshops them.
So I was there this year in the front row for this.
Okay.
Like in the mix. I asked some questions that led to punts. And boy, you want to feel power in your fingertips, people? And I think the press conference is underrated because he has no notes, guys. He's up there going off the dome. Yeah. He's not holding any paper. It's just him. And then like when something comes, it's 45 minutes. He's doing a 45-minute stand-up set. It's unbelievable. Like that is underrated. The jokes suck, most of them. Now there was one banger this year, which was like, I think a lot of teams are going to be pressing the belly button and we're going to have a lot more innies than outies. Like that's funny, dude. You know,
but it's something. Okay, but that part of it, which is obviously has become a real element of our offseason experience. Like, I think the reason why, not just the level of, oh my God, he's managing to get these deals that, blow us away all the time, even though I do agree that to this point, more of a known quantity. Like, the thing that I like about him is that he, as a character, for better or for worse, makes me feel like, again, like when I, read Lords of the Realm for the first time, I was like, this doesn't even feel like, and this is true with a lot of things when you read about something, history, whatever, 40, 50 years ago, it's like, this doesn't even feel like the same universe. Like it doesn't, but there's something about him that like is this character that feels like it's in this alternate reality, like this, it feels like a production. And it reminds us not just that everything is entertainment, but that he is playing this character that is a character and then is also doing the thing, which is getting players more money than anybody else ever. And so in that sense, I like that while it is potentially very problematic, I think him as a character in some ways is actually underrated and I never get tired of it. So that's why I threw him out.
I love that he just gives us countless opportunities to be like labor legend, Scott Boras did it again. Let Scott cook.
Yeah. So, and by the way, we got a long off season of that ahead of us, right?
I know. Now that Ohtani finally signed, it's time for Boras to shine.
That's what I'm telling you. And we're going to do, Yamamoto will sign first, who's not Boras. And then we're going to go the Bellinger, Chapman, Montgomery, Snell numbers. It's so great because all four of those guys, when these numbers come out, you will have arguments to be like, are you crazy? Like all four of them, right? This isn't even like the fact because like Bryce Harper, right? Yeah. Even Bryce Harper, we were like coming up with reasons why teams shouldn't, whatever, which was stupid. But it was Bryce Harper, right? And next year we'll have Juan Soto and that'll be that. But like these four are so perfect for people to just have their mind blown by the amount of money that they're going to sign for. It is. Can't wait.
Well, he's the reason that the Bellinger MLB trade rumors thing happened because he's a Boras client. Like that would have never happened if he was CAA. That number would have been nowhere near that. Nowhere near
so
that.
Great. It's so funny. So anyway. There you
also,
go.
like one thing that we didn't even mention, which maybe actually makes him slightly underrated in my mind, is that every fucking person who's about to hit free agency who's had a good career so far fires their agent and hires Boras. They all do it. Everybody does it. Even Pete just did it.
Correa, Pete.
Yeah, they all do it. They all fire their agent in the fifth year. In their fifth year of team control.
Altuve
and they hire Boras.
Altuve had him, left him, and then went back when he got closer to free agency.
Exactly. You just got to have the right tool for the job, and Boras is the tool for free agency.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway. All right, Jake back to you. I know we're going a little... I don't even know what long means to Tim pitches anymore, but...
It's okay. It's all right.
Go ahead, Jake.
Alex Rodriguez.
Oh, man. He's so fucking underrated, dude. He is so underrated. as a baseball player, as a person to follow, as an internet personality, as a dad, as a celebrity, as a weirdo,
as a girl dad, as a girl dad,
as a businessman, as a burgeoning guy who learned what feminism was about 3 years ago, as a Shark Tank TV personality.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He is one of the more underrated people in the baseball
world. It's what I just said, right? He somehow, after hitting 696 home runs, his character has elevated and expanded and evolved like 50 times since his final home run. And that is an incredible achievement. And you could say, oh, but he's so annoying to listen to him on TV. Yeah, but guess what? You are reacting, right? And that's the other thing. You know, when we have, especially in sports media now, it's like, oh, well, he's just saying that to get a reaction out of you. Not the case with A-Rod.
No, he really believes that.
Not the case. It's not a Stephen A. Smith thing where it's like, oh, man, or Russo, right? Chris Russo, right? Or like, oh, like you're getting riled up. Like, yeah, that's the whole point. No, dude's just out there saying stuff. And we're like, oh, my God, he said like that. That's a special kind of personality on top of the fact that like you have to remind yourself that like, oh, my God, like steroids, yes, clearly, but holy crap, this career is so overwhelmingly impressive on so many levels that if you're just a basic baseball dork, you pull up the BRF page and you're like, how is this real? So yeah, it's so many layers. Underrated.
Just the roller coaster that has been his public image is a pretty remarkable story to take in. He's had as you mentioned the steroid debacle and everything that went down with the Yankees, and then he had his like comeback tour post retirement where he was getting like magazine covers, and then people soured on him again, and they were like, we know actually you don't have to give Alex Rodriguez credit, and now he's just back, and now he's just here. I think that he's largely underrated, except for his business acumen, which
he's a dummy.
bores me to death. I'm like, really? You're doing real estate investments? Come on, bro.
When you start with $500 million, anybody can be a business genius. Like
That's the best. Going back to Shark Tank, I love the moments where it's like someone's giving a pitch and then they're like, how did you start this company? And they're like, oh yeah, like my dad gave me $500,000.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Got it.
I'm going to rain on a parade, I think, a little bit.
Hold on, wait. Okay. Before you do, can I the last float needs to come through. The last float is on Alex Rodriguez's baseball reference page. It's one of the funniest things ever. 2014, like all just bold italics everywhere. 50 home runs, 40 home runs. And then 2014, the line is just blocked together. Did not play in major or minor leagues, parentheses, suspended. Fucking awesome. I love that.
Oh, man.
Okay, Jake, please
run. All right, Jake, do it.
Do it to us.
As the only person on this Zoom call who has interviewed Alex Rodriguez twice. Jordan just once, me twice. I could not emphasize enough, respectfully, how not real he is.
Yeah.
That one day he was real. He has evolved into a synthetic concoction of jargon and well-tailored suits and lunch meetings with Warren Buffett. There is no there. Now, having a conversation with A-Rod is like talking to yourself. There is no, how do I say it? Like, I'm trying to say this in a way that is kind. When you talk to A-Rod, like, I think that there are things where A-Rod is genuinely insightful. Like, I don't want to come across as being anti A-Rod, but when you
least of all on this podcast, when you input into A-Rod, the output from A-Rod may have nothing to do at all with the input, whether it's in conversation. Like, did you listen to the interview I did with him where I was basically just like, I think he said something like, why did you bunt? Why do you like to bunt? And he was like, Warren Buffett is one of my best friends.
Right.
It was like how he responded. Like
that's so funny though. That's so funny.
What I'm gonna say. That's what I'm gonna say. For us, it's so funny, dude. Like as a character, it's amazing if you have enough perspective. If you're someone who is in like a day-to-day role where you are having to talk to A-Rod about actual things, that's probably a difficult job. He is only example of that level of celebrity that we have in the baseball world, where he is so famous and so much his own thing that he almost operates on a higher plane than the rest of us, which is both sad and incredibly entertaining.
I just also want to add, not just, yes, interviewing him is one experience. And I know that part of the frustration with having him on TV sometimes is there are better options, more deserving options, whatever. I totally 100%. And part of that too is people hate this guy in the game so much.
People hate
players do not like him at all. For so many reasons. And
Derek Jeter. No matter how much they try to pretend, that dude 100% A-Rod.
We can't comment on that. Can't comment on that. Fox Sports employees.
None of this is to say that any of that is incorrect, right? That's fine. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong, right? But again, I still lean where it's from my seat when I don't have to interview him. And also just in general, it's just this is an incredible character that continues to evolve. And from where it began to begin with, makes it all the more.
But if I was a big leaguer, stunning. He would really piss me off.
Oh yeah. But I think that on our show though, I think he's properly rated on our show, obviously because we're psychopaths. But he might even be overrated on our show in terms of how
just
funny
a little
he is.
bit, maybe.
But I think in the baseball world right now, for whatever reason, most people's opinion about A-Rod is about him as a color commentator on live broadcasts, and he's not very good at that. So you underrate the fact that there's all this other insanely interesting shit. When he punched the ball out of the glove going to first base, that is amazing. Crazy villain shit. When he wanted to get traded to the Red Sox, or he wanted to get traded to the Mets 3 years after signing the biggest contract in baseball history to play in Texas. What was he doing in Texas? Why was he there? Why was he on that team?
Right.
I feel I don't have any gauge of that, why he would do that. And he just has all these moments throughout his history, all these weird celebrity moments, all these weird tabloid, the painting of him that's in his house, all this weird shit. But also, we underrate him.
Right. But also, again, when I say players, I'm talking about players who have interacted with him directly, players of his generation who crossed paths or ever had to be with teammates, whatever. But at the same time, the generation right below, steroids or not, A-Rod was one of my favorite players, or was my favorite player, because how could he not be? He was an absolute, force of nature on the field in a way that no matter how it happened, you watched it happen, right? How real it was because of steroids. That didn't change how it felt when you watched him when you were 10. So that part's just totally lost to a lot of people now who just listen to him on TV. So
I do.
But I guess whatever. That's what you get. So
he's a little bit like a. His career is a little bit like a graphic novel series, right? Where if you just read the latest edition, you're not going to have the context. as an average fan, if you're just coming in right now and seeing him on TV, I think you're going to think he's overrated because you're this man adds nothing.
Yeah,
you need the lore, you need the backstory, and I think that's what we are trying to do on this here podcast.
Yeah, we're trying to codify the lore.
Exactly. Put him in the canon.
You got to be in for a penny, in for a pound with A-Rod. You got to know it all. You got the Centaur paintings, the 696 home runs. Those have to be of equal weight.
Exactly.
So if you're a patron, head over to the Patreon feed later this week, and you can listen to another couple bonus rounds. But if you're not, say goodbye to Jake and Jordan. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Bye.
You can listen to our podcast. If you like this podcast and you want to hear us more often, you can do that. Baseball Barbacast record 3 days a week. 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's a lot of days a week.
These guys post.
We show up. We don't bang shows, baby.
Thanks, guys.
To assess the equation of you. Checkmate, I couldn't lose.
Thank you to Jordan. No thanks to Jake. None to Jake. He was a little antagonistic on this pod. Had a little
fire.
A little aggro energy behind him. I kind of liked it. Good for the pod. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't get a thank you.
Good for our burgeoning beef with them, right? He's not invited back next time.
No, I think it's burgeoned. Jordan only next time. Maybe he was just mad that we washed him so bad in the least terrible owners draft.
I think so. Yeah, there was a bit of...
Yeah, they were lashing out about that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As a reminder, You can always call on our voicemail 785-422-5881. Share thoughts about things in the baseball world that are overrated or underrated. Ask questions. Give notes. You can also do that via email, tippingpitchespod@gmail.com, or Twitter. Now that Alex is back in, he will be reading all of our mentions and DMs.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch with Alex directly, that is tipping_pitches on Twitter. Other than that, thank you everybody for listening to this very long episode. And we will be back next week.
Laid the groundwork and then, just like clockwork, the dominoes cascaded in a line. What if I told you I'm a mastermind?
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Rodriguez. Tipping pitches.
Tipping pitches.
This is the one that I love the most.
Tipping pitches.
So we'll see you next week. See ya!